Chapter 4869. She hoped that Chu Chio would leave every day, but unfortunately, she couldn't. Chu Chio's memory had never recovered, and she was the savior of her children. If she showed any intention of chasing her away, she would definitely be criticized. But she didn't expect that Chu Chio would mention leaving first. Miss Chu's memory has recovered? Tang Shan asked, but she was actually happy. Chu Chio shook her head. Not yet, but I've disturbed you for many days. I think it's time for me to leave. When the regent comes back, I'll say goodbye to him and then leave. Chu Chio looked at Tang Shan's fake reluctance and rolled her eyes in her heart. Didn't she want her to leave? These rich madams really knew how to pretend. She was afraid that if she stayed here, they would give her some medicine to kill her. When Yun Bingjun came back, she would ask him for a sum of money and then do business in the capital. Recently, she occasionally went out to investigate and found out that there were many businesses she could do in this world. The customs here were quite open. Every day, there would be women shopping on the streets and buying beautiful things. She could make a lot of money by making rouge and face powder. When Yun Dan and Yun Xian heard that Chu Chio was leaving, they were very reluctant and hugged her tightly. Tang Shan was heartbroken, but she couldn't help but smile. Dan Xian it's not that I'm not in the capital anymore. I just don't live here. This is not my home. I have to live in my own place. When I settle down, you can come and play with me in the future. Actually, she was quite reluctant to part with these two children. They were the first friends she made when she came here. Only then did the two children give up. When Yun Bingjun came back, Chu Chio went to see him. You've recovered your memory? Not yet, Chu Chio replied. But I can't always live here. This is not my home. I have to find a place to settle down and live in my own place to relax. Yun Bingjun was a little surprised. This woman was really bold to say such things in front of him. What do you want to do after you leave? I want to do some rouge and face powder business. I feel that I should know how to do it. When the time comes, I'll try to figure it out. Chu Chio glanced at Yun Bingjun and said, but I need the regent's support. It was the first time Yun Bingjun met such a bold woman. No one had ever dared to ask him for his support. You're Tan and Xian savior. As long as you don't ask for too much, I'll satisfy you. Why don't you tell me how you need my support? Chu Chio was not polite at all. I want to shop, and I also want some capital. Lastly, I need 2 people. I know that it is not easy to open a shop in the capital. With the regent's people watching over it, I don't think anyone would dare to do anything. Chu Chio's words made Yun Bingjun take a few more glances at her. This woman was quite calculative, but he didn't dislike her. This was much more admirable than directly asking him for a few million taels of silver. This made him think of Tanghua. Back then, Tanghua had asked him for 1,000,000 taels of gold. Now that he thought about it, his heart still ached. That was why there was such a huge difference between people. Some people cared about temporary benefits, while others cared about long-term benefits. There was no doubt that Chu Chio had considered the long-term benefits, which made him admire him even more. As for that Tanghua, she took his 1,000,000 taels of gold and shut herself in her room all day, eating, drinking, and playing with the little emperor. She had no ambition at all. Chapter 4870. At the family Tang's side, they basically treated her as dead. In any case, if she didn't come out and embarrass herself, everyone would tacitly agree that she didn't exist. All right, I agree. Thank you, Prince Regent. The two of them looked at each other and laughed. Unknowingly, their relationship had become closer. Chu Chio moved out the next day. Yun Bingjun had someone find her a prosperous shop and a courtyard for her. He gave her some money and 2 people she could order around. In the following month, Chu Chio was busy with her matters and didn't have time to play with the 2 children. When the 2 children heard that she was busy, they didn't disturb her for the time being. Chu Chio promised them that she would look for them after she was done with her work and even give them gifts. Tang Shan finally let out a sigh of relief. If Chu Chio stayed in the manor every day, she would definitely die of a heart attack. Look, what do you think of this? What is this? Tanghua took a beautiful white ceramic jar from Zhou Jin's hand. There were beautiful patterns on the outside of the jar. It looked very high class. Open it and take a look. Tanghua raised her eyebrows and opened the lid. When she saw what was inside, she understood. It's actually lipstick. Do you like it? Zhou Jin took out a box. It's a set. It's all new stuff. This shop is in the capital. A rouge shop opened in the capital some time ago. It's full of new stuff. As the emperor, you don't pay attention to the affairs of the imperial court. Instead, you spend all your time observing these rouge shops. Don't you think you're neglecting your duties? Zhou Jin leaned to the side. Who said that paying attention to rouge shops isn't a big deal? This is a big deal. It's also something that belongs to our great lawn. I realize that the things in this rouge shop called Autumn Water are better than those that were offered in the past. If it can continue to develop like this, it might become a special feature of our great lawn in the future. Tanghua already knew who was the one who made these things. She dipped her finger in some lipstick and applied it to her lips. The texture seemed to be pretty good. Other things aside, Chu Qiu was quite good at studying rouge and face powder. This is not bad. The things in this rouge shop are better than those that were used in the past. Zhou Jin, I knew you would like it. How did you know about this shop? Any new news in the capital can't escape my eyes. My men will write down any new information and pass it to me. At this point, Zhou Jin lowered his voice. Do you know who the owner of this Autumn Water Rouge shop is? Who? It was a woman named Chu Qiu. Tanghua's gaze became strange. Zhou Jin seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly explained. Of course, the most important thing isn't that she's a woman. It's that this woman's background isn't simple. Could it be that Zhou Jin had investigated Chu Qiu's background? Some time ago, something happened to Yun Bingjuan's son and daughter. They were almost sold by human traffickers. Do you know? Tanghua now understood that Zhou Jin still hadn't found out about Chu Qiu's background. He only knew that Chu Qiu was related to Yun Bingjuan. This woman is the one who saved Yun Bingjuan's son and daughter. With Yun Bingjuan's help, she opened this shop. Zhou Jin rubbed his hands. I feel that this matter isn't simple. Everyone knows that the regent and his wife are very loving. They only have each other for so many years. But now that a woman suddenly appeared, I feel that something is going to happen. Tanghua, how do you know that something is going to happen? What if this is just Yun Bingjuan thanking her for her help? Chapter 4871. But that Chu Qiu is not ordinary. Yun Bingjuan even met her in private. Recently, the two of them seem to have some kind of cooperation. I haven't received any information about the details. Cooperation? So that's how it is. What's your purpose in telling me this in such a hurry? Zhou Jin held Tanghua's small hand, dipped his fingertips in the small jar of lipstick, and wiped her lips. To make you happy, I think you will be happy. Tanghua decided to go to Autumn Water Rouge shop to take a look. Ever since she moved into this house, she basically didn't go out. Some of her social interactions were also almost cut off. These were not very important to her. The social interactions of ancient women, other than making friends to pass the time, were to exchange information. This time, going out could be considered as her reappearance in front of people. Since Chu Qiu was here, she should also go out and see the fun. Autumn Water Rouge shop's decorations were indeed not ordinary. Although it was not luxurious everywhere, it was very stylish. Compared to ordinary rouge shops, there was a place for customers to rest and drink tea. Tanghua got down from the carriage and walked to Autumn Water Rouge shop. A clever maid came up to greet her and warmly invited her in. The display inside was very neat and orderly, giving a refreshing feeling at first glance. Of course, she also saw Chu Qiu, who was helping the madams and Mrs. try on the rouge. Perhaps because Tanghua's gaze was very focused, Chu Qiu couldn't help but look back. When she saw Tanghua, she only felt that her eyes lit up. This should be the best woman she had seen since she transmigrated. In fact, the princess regent was also very beautiful, but she felt that this one was more beautiful. When Tanghua was looking at things, Chu Qiu had finished her work and was already in front of her. Miss, what do you want to choose? Just looking around. Chu Qiu smiled and introduced several kinds of rouge to Tanghua. Tanghua only took a few glances and bought all the rouge that Chu Qiu introduced. After Tanghua left, Chu Qiu asked the people around him which family this young miss was from. She looks familiar, but I can't remember. I go to all the gatherings in Beijing. I can't remember who she is. Chu Qiu also felt that Tanghua was a bit familiar. Suddenly, She remembered that this young lady just now seemed to be a bit similar to the regent's consort. Aya, I remember now. Isn't this that person? Chuchio quickly asked. Who is she? Who else could it be? The one who hasn't come out for more than 4 years is also a pitiful one. If it weren't for that incident, would she be unable to return home? Chuchio looked at these madams and young Mrs. chatting. They didn't mention names, so he was very anxious. However, she had a way to make them open their mouths and give them some gifts. Naturally, they would feel closer to her. Chapter 4872. Bingjun, is this thing really useful? Tang Shan asked with a doubtful attitude. In fact, she had a heart attack. Even if Yun Bingjun didn't seem to have any feelings for Chuchio, his praise for Chuchio couldn't be concealed. After being married to Yun Bingjun for so many years, she had never seen him praise another woman other than her. However, she couldn't be jealous of Yun Bingjun because of this, because there seemed to be nothing between them. If word got out, others would say something bad about her. She also didn't want to leave behind a jealous and gossiping person for Yun Bingjun. Because of a groundless Chuchio, it would affect their relationship. This thing is very useful. The soap has already been distributed to the servants in the residence. According to Miss Chu, soap has many fragrances. After washing clothes, there will be a lingering fragrance on it. If Shan likes it, ask someone to try it. Yun Bingjun was very happy to give a lot of soap and scented soap to Tang Shan. Tang Shan could only take it and thank him with a pleasant expression. She was so bored that she almost fell ill. Yun Bingjun saw that her complexion was not good and quickly went forward to hold her hand. Are you feeling unwell again? It's nothing. You know that my body has always been like this. Being able to live one more day is worth it. I only hope that I can live until Tan and Xian grow up. Then, I can leave in peace. You only think about the 2 children. Have you never thought about me? If you leave, what do you want me to do? Yun Bingjun hugged Tang Shan. The doctor said that although the pill can't make your body better, it can prolong your life. Take one regularly and you will be fine. The biggest reason why Yun Bingjun agreed to give Tanghua 1,000,000 taels of gold was because of this pill. For so many years, he was quite satisfied that Tanghua didn't come to cause trouble. Of course, Tang Shan didn't want to die. According to the current situation, if she really died, it might be to make room for Chuchio. Then what would happen to her 2 children? Although Chuchio treated the 2 children well, once a woman had her own children, it was impossible for her not to think about them. At that time, the 2 children would definitely be wronged. She acted like this because she wanted Yun Bingjun to pay more attention to her and not give him time to look at other women. Tang Shan was already thinking about how to get rid of Chuchio, this woman who threatened her position. They definitely couldn't do it openly. Chuchio had Yun Bingjun's people by his side, so they couldn't do it secretly either. What if Chuchio got married? Tang Shan's eyes lit up. That's right. If Chuchio got married, she would no longer be a threat to her position. Then what kind of family should she show Chuchio Xiang? The main thing was that Chuchio's identity was unclear, so it was not good to look at him. Tang Shan had another idea. Why don't she take Chuchio as her god-sister? Then, it would be easier for her to get married. No. Tang Shan hurriedly shook her head. It would be better to let Bingjun take Chuchio as his god-sister. Once Tang Shan figured it out, she immediately asked someone to bring her a name list. She planned to show it to Chuchio Xiang. On the other side, Chuchio was still busy with the business in his hands. He had no idea that Tang Shan was helping him look for someone. That's a good idea. You actually came up with it. Yun Bingjun and Chuchio sat in a tea house, discussing soap and perfumed soap. In fact, Chuchio also wanted to make glass, but it was too difficult. The conditions here couldn't meet the requirements. Therefore, she just had to do what she was doing first and think about the rest later. Chapter 4873. Just these strange ideas of hers were enough for Yun Bingjun to admire. Do you remember anything from the past? Yun Bingjun asked another question in order to get down to business. Chuchio shook her head. No, but it's not important. It's good now. After these few months of contact, Chuchio also admired Yun Bingjun. No matter how bold her ideas were, Yun Bingjun would support them. This showed that he was a person with great foresight. For such a person to become the regent of the Great Mist Country, It was the country's blessing. If there was no Yun Bingjun, could that little emperor in his early 20s really make the great mist country so prosperous? It was said that the little emperor was good at eating, drinking, and playing, but he didn't know how to govern the country. The great mist country was supported by Yun Bingjun alone. Yun Bingjun, the regent, was different from the kind of powerful regent she had imagined, who only cared about himself. No one could help but admire him. Will the regent go to tomorrow's poetry meet? Chucho asked. I think that at this time, if we release the new products in the store, it should attract more people's attention. If the regent can come, that would be even better. Yun Bingjun was not interested in the poetry meet, but since Chucho said so, he also felt that it was a good idea. Okay, let's do it like that. Tang Shan hasn't appeared in a long time. I plan to bring her out for some fresh air. At this time, Yun Bingjun had no other thoughts about Chucho, only admiration. Chucho was the same. If they didn't get along for a long time and didn't experience some things together, these two would probably stay like this forever. But they were originally the male and female lead, and were destined to walk together because of some things. This was only a matter of time. Unless there was an existence like Tanghua, who caused some trouble in the middle, there was no way for them to walk together again. But Tanghua would not do that. Don't come tomorrow. I want to go to the poetry meet. Your identity is not suitable. Tanghua pushed Zhou Jin in disdain. This made Zhou Jin feel very wronged, and he came out claiming to be sick. In recent years, the courtiers in the imperial court had become more and more restless. It was probably because they saw that he had fallen ill so many times but still did not die. They felt that there was no hope of establishing a new emperor and wanted to give him a last resort. During the morning court session, he always liked to stir up trouble to make him fight for power with the regent, which always gave him a headache. I'm definitely going to the poetry gathering this time. I want to see what Chucho can do. You just wait at home. I'll come back tonight to have dinner with you. I'll bring you a stick of candied haws when I come back later. Zhou Jin. So you're coaxing me like I'm a child? Can't be coaxed? I can coax her. I can. Zhou Jin hurriedly said, Then I'll wait for you at home. Remember to come back early. There are still people waiting for you at home. Don't be too playful. Ling Yu almost face-bombed. Was this the emperor that she had known for so many years? Why was he becoming more and more shameless in front of Master? She had seen the emperor who was calm and collected in private. She had also seen the emperor who pretended to be incompetent in front of the courtiers. She had even seen the emperor who threw a tantrum and used the excuse of punishing a nail. Now, she had seen such a shameless emperor. Speaking of which, Master was more capable. She could make the emperor so shameless and obedient. Tui, it was lucky that she didn't say this out loud. Otherwise, she would definitely be punished. Chapter 4874. When Tanghua arrived at the place where the poetry meet was held, there were already many people there. The moment she appeared, many people's gazes turned towards her. Recently, Tanghua had been more active, and she had shown her face in front of everyone again. No one forgot what happened in the past, so it was inevitable that they would look at Tanghua differently when they saw her. Many people felt that she was miserable, but because of Tang Shan, they didn't dare to get too close to Tanghua. After all, Tanghua and Tang Shan had broken up, and she hadn't returned to the family Tang for so many years. The family Tang's attitude was obviously to give up on this daughter. Getting close to Tanghua was a thankless task. However, no one dared to provoke her. It was meaningless. Tanghua chose a seat and sat down, ignoring everyone. She was here to watch the fun, not to make friends. Chucho had been here for a long time. With her status, she couldn't be later than these madams and misses. Because of Autumn Wateroo's shop, Chucho was very popular. When those madams and misses arrived, they smiled and chatted with Chucho. When Tanghua arrived, it was indeed quiet for a moment. Chucho couldn't help but look at Tanghua. The person next to her pulled her. Why are you interested in Miss Tang? Miss Tang is also a pitiful person. But the person next to her didn't continue, and Chucho understood. She was pitiful, but no one would get close to her because she didn't have any power behind her. She wasn't worth being friends with, and they might even offend the regent's consort. Thinking of Tang Shan's viciousness, Chucho felt that she shouldn't go to the regent's residence in the future. She was also afraid that Tang Shan would drug her. Naturally, Chuchio wouldn't choose to get close to Tanghua. After all, she didn't want to cause trouble for herself. She remembered that Yun Bingjun and Tang Shan would come later. She didn't know what would happen when they met. As she was thinking, Yun Bingjun appeared with Tang Shan. When these two appeared, many people were envious. Even though Tang Shan had done so many things in the past, her position as the regent's consort was not shaken at all. Many people remembered that Tanghua was here. Perhaps because they had a tacit understanding, they all moved aside, exposing Tangua's figure to Tang Shan. Tang Shan's attention was still on Chuchio. She inadvertently shifted her gaze and saw Tanghua sitting there, slowly sipping her tea. In that instant, her body stiffened. When Yun Bingjun saw Tanghua, he frowned. If he had known that Tanghua was here, he definitely would not have brought Tang Shan along. That incident was ultimately Tang Shan's fault. Now that the two of them had bumped into each other, who knew what would happen? Yun Bingjun planned to help Tang Shan sit on the other side. Unexpectedly, Tang Shan's eyes turned red, and she went directly to Tanghua's seat. Now that so many people were looking at her, if she pretended not to know anything, she didn't know what other people would say. In the current situation, Tang Shan could neither go nor stay. In the end, she had no choice but to go. Guo, I didn't expect you to come too. Tang Shan's eyes were red as she wiped her tears. It's been so many years. How have you been? Tanghua looked up and looked at Tang Shan with a faint smile. Pretty good. I'm free and carefree. I have no worries and no worries. I can eat and drink. In one sentence, she described Tanghua's life for so many years. In fact, she herself felt that her life was pretty good. But when these words reached the ears of these people, they felt all kinds of sadness. Chapter 4875. Freedom meant that there was no one to control her. Not going home meant loneliness. Carefree. What kind of person could be carefree? A person without hope. Carefree. Her sister framed her, and her family gave up on her. Only then would she be carefree. Being able to eat and drink meant that she couldn't find anything meaningful to do other than eating and drinking. Guo, you should move back. Tang Shan was just saying it casually. She still had to save face. She shouldn't have come today. Since she was here, she could only bite the bullet and try to look as pitiful as possible. I'm living well. Why should I move back? Tang Shan. If we live together, we can take care of each other. I can't take care of myself? It's so comfortable to live alone. If I move back, won't I be living under someone else's roof? I also have to see my enemy every day. I'm really afraid that I won't be able to control myself and do something that no one wants to see. That incident had already left a deep impression on everyone. Tang Shan couldn't pretend to be pitiful anymore. Tanghua picked up the teacup and tasted the tea. No one thought that she was being rude. Instead, they felt that her reaction was understandable, especially when they saw the two 10-year-old children behind Tang Shan. They all shook their heads. She even brought the children here. Wasn't she deliberately trying to piss her off? Guo, why do you? Tanghua glanced at Tang Shan indifferently. Regent's wife, don't mess with me for no reason. We can still live in peace. Guo, we are sisters after all. Don't be a joke here. I'm not afraid of being laughed at. If they want to laugh, they will laugh at you. Tanghua noticed that Tang Shan's face was pale, and she looked like she was about to faint. Don't faint in front of me. Otherwise, the regent will think that I bullied you. I didn't take the initiative to come to you. You came to me. If you faint, don't blame me. These words were obviously meant for Yun Bingjun. Tang Shan cursed in her heart. She shouldn't have come today. She originally planned to say a few more words before fainting. Now she forced herself not to faint. Help yourselves. Don't disturb me. Tanghua waved her hand casually. Tang Shan didn't want to say anything more. She was so angry that she fainted. She could tell that Tanghua really didn't care about sisterhood. As long as Tanghua was easy to talk to, she could find a way to turn things around. Yun Bingjun gave Tanghua a warning look and sat on the other side with Tang Shan. The people who were watching the show felt that it wasn't very satisfying, but they didn't dare to say anything. Next, it was time for everyone to display their abilities. It was like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each displaying their own abilities. No one wanted to fall behind others. There were people who could compose poems, write calligraphy, draw pictures, and pair couplets. Chapter 4876. Tangwa looked at her with a half-smile, as if she was mocking her. This time, Tang Shan was really angry. Tangwa looked at Yun Bingjun and Chu Qiu. Tang Shan looked over and saw the two of them talking and laughing. Then, she blacked out and fainted. Tang Shan's fainting shocked everyone. The poetry gathering could not continue. Yun Bingjun hurriedly fed Tang Shan a pill and carried her away in a hurry. Sister Chu, we won't stay any longer. We have to go back to see Mother. Yun Dan and Yun Xian also hurriedly bid farewell. They could not help but look back at Tangwa, who was sitting in the pavilion. In front of Tangwa, they did not have the confidence. They also knew what happened back then. Moreover, the current little aunt made them feel afraid. They did not dare to be arrogant in front of her. After watching the show, Tangwa left with Ling Yu. After strolling on the streets for a while, she found a place that sold candied haws. She bought 2 sticks and returned to the residence. Chu Qiu looked at the leisurely back view and felt a little strange. Previously, she also felt that Tangwa was very pitiful. After all, she could not have children of her own in this lifetime. Moreover, this was an ancient setting. She did not know what to do in the future. However, she suddenly realized that Tangwa did not seem to be living that badly. She was carefree and unrestrained. She did not even fear Tang Shan. Compared to many people who lived carefully, she seemed to be more comfortable. Tang Shan fainted again? Zhou Jin ate the candied haws that Tangwa brought and felt sweet. Can her body take it? She can. That pill was specially made for her. It's fine as long as she's still breathing. Tangwa said casually, hurry back to the palace after eating. There are more and more things happening recently. Yes, I know. Just now, Qi Qing said that there was news from the foreign country. I have to hurry back and see what's going on. Zhou Jin had a premonition that Tangwa's divination was going to come true. As expected, when Zhou Jin returned to the palace and saw the movements of the foreign country, he completely believed in Tangwa's divination. He thought of a way to leak this information to Yun Bingjun. As expected, in the morning court a few days later, Yun Bingjun reported this news and expressed his intention to send troops to intimidate the small foreign countries. Even though many people disagreed, he still tried his best to overcome all difficulties. In the end, Zhou Jin finalized this matter and sent troops to intimidate the small foreign countries. This time, it was also an opportunity for him to gain some military power. Chu Qiu's business was getting better and better. After the poetry recital, Tang Shan fell ill for a while. Not long after, news came from the border that there was a problem with the provisions. Yun Bingjun secretly left the capital to investigate the matter, intending to catch all the people who were playing tricks. Of course, the news of him going out could not be hidden from some people. Thus, some people took advantage of this opportunity to kill Yun Bingjun. Because of that, those people joined hands and caused Yun Bingjun to suffer. Not long after, the capital received news of Yun Bingjun's disappearance. For a time, everyone in the capital was in a state of panic. The ministers all had their own thoughts, but they did not dare to act rashly. They decided to wait. It would be best to wait for Yun Bingjun's corpse to appear. If Yun Bingjun's corpse was not found, then they would have to wait for half a year. Of course, Yun Bingjun did not die. Instead, he was met by Chu Qiu, who went out. With Chu Qiu's help, he escaped the pursuit. He did not appear for a while because he was seriously injured and was currently recuperating. Later, with Chu Qiu's help, he returned to the capital safe and sound. He did not return home for the time being. He chose to stay in Chu Qiu's small courtyard. Yun Bingjun was waiting for the ministers who wanted to force the abdication. When the time came, he would catch them all in one fell swoop. Zhou Jin was also waiting for these people to rebel. When Yun Bingjun appeared, he would help him replace this group of people. Has Yun Bingjun recovered from his injuries? Zhou Jin asked Tangwa. Tangwa, soon. It's been almost half a year. He should have recovered. During this time, his days have been very comfortable. Fortunately, my future empress is very resourceful. She can actually monitor Yun Bingjun's every move. This time, the heavens are really helping me. Zhou Jin rubbed his hands. He did not know how many of his men could be replaced this time. Chapter 4877. I'm leaving. Chu Qiu, who was making tea, paused when she heard Yun Bingjuan's words. She picked up the teapot and poured him a cup. Your injuries have long recovered. It's time to go. Yun Bingjun was feeling complicated. He didn't expect that in just half a year, he would be moved by Chu Qiu. The only person he liked was Tang Shan. How could he be moved by someone else? He couldn't deny this fact. After spending half a year together, he could clearly see what kind of amazing woman Chu Qiu was. What this amazing woman knew was something he had never seen before. Chu Qiu's charm was something that ordinary women didn't have. Even Tang Shan couldn't give him such a feeling. He even had a thought in his heart. If they had met earlier, they wouldn't be like this now. Chu Qiu sat down. Her mood was also very complicated. She never thought that she would actually like a man with a wife. From the first day she met Yun Bingjun, she knew that this man was extraordinary. Not many women could escape from him. When they saw him, they would definitely be moved. She thought that she was an exception, but after spending time together, she realized that she couldn't escape. Without this half a year together, she could still restrain herself and not think about those things, pretending that they didn't exist. That day, she saw the injured Yun Bingjun lying in the grass beside her. Looking at that familiar face, she actually panicked. At that time, she understood that she was moved by this man. When she sensed that he was still breathing, she actually became happy. This meant that everything about this man would affect her heart. After spending half a year together, she almost couldn't control herself. She could feel that Yun Bingjun was the same as her. He also had feelings for her. However, there was Tang Shan between them. She didn't want to get involved in other people's feelings. Yun Bingjun most likely didn't want to break everything. Tang Shan's health wasn't good, and she was the mother of 2 children. It was impossible between the two of them. The two sat in the pavilion. Neither of them spoke. It was very quiet. After a long time, they looked at each other for a long time. Chu Qiu said first, "Leave this place. Just treat it as a dream." Yun Bingjun saw Chu Qiu's appearance and wanted to go over and hug her, but he restrained himself. She echoed Chu Qiu's words. It was a wonderful dream that made one forget to return. Chu Qiu's eyes were filled with tears. Why was it like this? That night, Yun Bingjun quietly left. Before leaving, he went to see Chu Qiu. She was fast asleep, and he stood by her side and watched her for a long time. After he left, Chu Qiu opened her eyes. It turned out that she hadn't fallen asleep. On the 3rd day, there were some ministers who could not bear it any longer and collaborated with a certain prince to force Zhou Jian to abdicate in the name of eradicating an incapable ruler. At the crucial moment, Yun Bingjun appeared with his men and caught all the officials who were trying to force the emperor to abdicate. As for that prince, he was also imprisoned in the mansion and was not allowed to leave for the rest of his life. Yun Bingjun casually ended the originally grand attempt to force the emperor to abdicate. Yun Bingjun also used this opportunity to investigate a group of courtiers. Because of this, there were many empty positions. Yun Bingjun then gave a list of names to Zhou Jin to help Zhou Jin analyze the situation of these officials and find suitable positions. After Zhou Jin heard it, he immediately approved it. More than half of the people on this list were his people. After Yun Bingjun left with the imperial edict, Zhou Jin could no longer hold back his laughter. He didn't expect that the battle between the two sides would let him get such a big advantage. I see. I thought that something bad had happened to Miss Chu. As Tangwa spoke, she noticed that Yun Dan and Yun Xian were both looking at her with fear in their eyes. She found it hilarious that these 2 children were still the same. Miss Chu, I really like the things here. As long as Miss Tang likes it, Chu Qiu said very politely. In fact, she was also very vigilant when she noticed that Tangwa was sizing up Yun Dan and Yun Xian. After all, there was a grudge between them. If Tangwa really remembered what Tang Shan had done and did something to these 2 innocent children, it would be very bad. When Tangwa saw this, she seemed to have thought of something, and the way she looked at Yun Dan and Yun Xian became cold. Her appearance frightened the 2 children, and they hurriedly hid behind Chu Qiu. Chapter 4879. In the past, they weren't afraid of Tangua and even liked to shout in front of Tangua. Since Tangua left the regent's residence, they didn't seem to dare to speak to her like that anymore. Chuchio frowned. Seeing that there was no one in the shop, he said directly, "Miss Tang, no matter what grudge you have with the regent's consort, please don't implicate the two children. You're scaring them." "What did I do?" Tangua asked. "Did I scold them or hit them?" Chuchio couldn't say anything for a moment. She didn't, but her expression just now. But if she talked about her expression, it seemed a little unreasonable. In short, Tan and Xian are both children. If Miss Tang has any grievances, you should find the right person. Boss Chu is really warm-hearted. Tangwa smiled. "I hope you can always think like this." Tangwa bought some things and left. She just came over to take a look. She didn't expect Chu Chio to be hostile to her because of the two children. She came over for another purpose, which was to let Yun Bingjun pay attention to Chu Chio's situation. Yun Bingjun's people would definitely report to him when she came over. As expected, Yun Bingjun received the news that day. He knew that there was some unhappiness between Tangua and Chu Chio. His subordinates also mentioned that Chu Chio seemed to be losing weight. It was said that he had no appetite recently. Yun Bingjun felt a little suffocated when he thought of Chu Chio losing weight. The next day, he couldn't help but go to see Chu Chio. Of course, he used the excuse of discussing business to invite Chu Chio to the tea house. Seeing the unbelievably thin Chu Chio, the memories that he planned to seal were opened again. "I heard that you have no appetite recently? No matter what, your health is important," Yun Bingjun said. "I asked someone to bring some appetizers over. Try it." Chu Chio was touched and couldn't help but say, "So you didn't come to discuss business with me, but to decide whether I eat or not?" Yun Bingjun didn't know how to answer. There was just a little difference between the two of them, but both of them knew it very well. There was no result in the first place. "Why did you come to find me? Isn't this adding to my troubles? I could have used a year or a few years to forget that memory, but once you appeared, I had to start all over again." "Chu Chio," Yun Bingjun called out, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he sighed and said, "We can only blame ourselves for meeting you too late." It was precisely because of this Yun Bingjun that Chu Chio couldn't help but be moved. If Yun Bingjun was tempted by her and wanted to bring her back, she would not be so tempted. "You'd better go back, lest the princess consort becomes anxious. If she knew, she would definitely be unhappy." "Then what about you?" Yun Bingjun blurted out. After saying that, he was very vexed. As expected, Chu Chio's smile was somewhat miserable. "What about me?" "What happened to me was no longer important. Just as you said, I came too late, and I made a mistake. I couldn't resist my feelings for you." Yun Bingjun didn't know how to comfort him. When the tea turned cold, the two parted ways. When Yun Bingjun returned to the residence, Tang Shan called him over. "Shaner, what is it?" Tang Shan took out some portraits. "I've picked some people here. I'll ask Miss Chu to come over and take a look at them. What do you think?" "Pick people?" Yun Bingjun didn't understand. Tang Shan still felt that only when Chu Chio was married off would she be at ease. She was really afraid that the other party would talk business with Yun Bingjun and fall in love with him. All these years, he has had such thoughts about Guo-er. Guo-er doesn't seem to dislike it. There is no higher position than the emperor, I thought. The power is in my hands, so I don't have to worry about her being bullied. Tang Shan, that's true. In her heart, she thought that even if the emperor was a good-for-nothing, the ministers would still want the emperor to have an heir. Tangua was infertile. No one knew what she would face in the future. If the emperor married one, he would definitely marry a second one. At that time, they would be separated from each other. "Then you should go." "If I go, Guo-er will be the first to disagree. She might think that I have other thoughts." Yun Bingjun also had the same thought. No matter what, Tangua's surname was Tang. Chapter 4881. He also had another idea, which was to get Tangua into the palace. Then, her every move would be under his surveillance, and she would no longer be able to harm Tang Shan and his two children. Here, Tang Shan called Chu Chio to the Fu. Chu Qiu was puzzled at first, but when she saw the portraits, she panicked. Then, she realized that Tang Shan probably didn't find anything. She only felt that she was a threat, so she did this. Her heart calmed down a little. She also looked at the portraits seriously. Perhaps, she could really choose a man with a good character to marry. It would be a good idea to get rid of her previous thoughts. How is it? They all look dignified and have their own merits, but Tang Shan was satisfied. It seemed that Chu Qiu didn't have any feelings for Bingjun. Otherwise, she wouldn't have chosen the portraits so seriously. She couldn't help but get closer to Chu Qiu. If you have any requests, just say it. I'll go take care of it for you. I can't tolerate my husband taking concubines and womanizing outside. No matter when, he can only have me. If there is such a person, I'll have to trouble Wang Fei. Chu Qiu's request wasn't harsh at all. But whether it was ancient times or modern times, it wasn't easy to find such a person. It was easy to not take concubines, but not womanizing was not easy. Is that so? Then let's wait and see. Tang Shan pondered. Since Chu Qiu had this idea, she definitely wouldn't have any thoughts about Bingjun. She wasn't that anxious. On the other side, Yun Bingjun entered the palace. This time, he came to discuss the matter of Tanghua with Zhou Jin. Emperor, it's time for you to marry an empress. This official knows that you like Guo. If you agree, you can directly make Guo empress. Zhou Jin almost couldn't help but rub his hands. Of course, he was willing. But he still had to discuss this matter with Guo. Yun Bingjun looked at Zhou Jin's hesitant and expectant expression. He immediately understood. Emperor, are you afraid that the courtiers will object? That's right. Zhou Jin nodded. It would be best if Yun Bingjun could help him solve this problem. Such a cute and capable official. He didn't know if he would be willing to help him when he gained power in the future. As long as the emperor is willing, this official can make those courtiers have nothing to say. The emperor marrying the empress is a family matter. They can't interfere. Yun Bingjun said with a domineering expression, if they want to meddle in this matter, then this subject will propose that in the future, the wives and concubines of these subjects must be examined by your majesty. If your majesty is not satisfied, then this marriage will not go through. Zhou Jin clapped his hands happily. Okay, let's do as the regent says. However, I have to discuss this matter with Guo. Yun Bingjun was not at all surprised by Zhou Jin's attitude. As long as the little emperor was obedient, it did not matter even if he was a little henpecked. It just so happened that henpecked was the little emperor's weakness. In his eyes, the little emperor was full of weaknesses. As long as the other party was obedient and well-behaved, it would be fine. Jean, to go take a look. Yun Bingjun looked at Zhou Jin's impatient expression and was in a good mood. But when he thought about how Tang Shan had called Chu Qiu to her residence, he felt a little unhappy. He also hurried out of the palace to see how the situation was. That's how it is. Do you think we should delay it for another 2 years? Or do you think we should get married? Zhou Jin grabbed Tangua's small hand. This is an opportunity. With Yun Bingjun helping me, we can prepare for the wedding in peace. Tanghua realized how much Zhou Jin liked to order Yun Bingjun around. Zhou Jin didn't hate Yun Bingjun. Instead, he admired such a capable courtier. It wasn't the first time he revealed in front of her that it would be great if Yun Bingjun was his right-hand man. If Yun Bingjun could be used by Zhou Jin, it wouldn't be bad. The imperial court needed such a person. Guo, have you thought it through? Zhou Jin asked nervously. He was over 20 years old. He should be the only emperor in history who didn't have a wife in his 20s, right? Until now, he had only held her small hand. Every night, he was alone in an empty room. He could already imagine how the history books would record him. An emperor in his 20s who didn't have a wife. Tragic. System. It was indeed very tragic. Chapter 4882. When Tanghua agreed to the marriage, Zhou Jin was so happy that he couldn't tell north from south. After chatting with Tanghua for a while, he left, saying that he had to prepare for the wedding. Her Majesty seems to be really happy. There's no need for Her Majesty to personally prepare for the wedding, Lingyu whispered to Tanghua. Tanghua smiled. Let him be. He has waited for so long. Lingyu felt strange when she heard her tone. Why was Master so doting towards His Majesty? Wasn't this a little reversed? System, what's wrong with that? That's normal. Master, about your marriage with His Majesty, what will happen to the family Tang? Lingyu had been by Tangwa's side for a few years now. Naturally, she knew that Tangwa hated Tangshan and the Tang family. She wanted nothing more than to sever all ties with them. It was also because of her master's ability that she could be so confident and not rely on the family. If it was another woman who suffered the same fate as her master, she would have died a long time ago. Many years ago, I had nothing to do with the family Tang. Lingyu expressed that she understood, but still said hesitantly, I'm afraid that when the imperial edict is issued, the family Tang will arrange for people to take you back. Just send them out, Tangwa said casually. She was too lazy to be entangled with the family Tang. Their good days were still ahead of them. On the other side, Yun Bingjun returned to the residence and bumped into Chu Qiu. Seeing Chu Qiu's pale and thin face, his heart ached. Chu Qiu greeted him awkwardly, but was stopped by Yun Bingjun. He seemed to be thinking for a while. Have you picked anyone suitable? He realized that if this continued, he might not be able to control his feelings for Chu Qiu. He had never been so possessive of a woman, not even when he was with Tang Shan. After meeting Chu Qiu, he knew what it meant to be alive and what it meant to be moved. Every time he thought of this, he felt a little guilty. Not yet, Chu Qiu replied. Yun Bingjun unconsciously let out a sigh of relief. Even he himself did not realize how nervous he was about this matter. He was afraid that Chu Qiu would really pick someone and casually marry her off. Then take your time to choose. Yun Bingjun said, you must choose a good one to be worthy of you. Chu Qiu said, I'm afraid you won't be able to pick one. How many young masters in the capital don't have concubines? How many of them don't have maids? And these are all things that I can't tolerate. Yun Bingjun was both happy and upset. Regent, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. Chu Qiu didn't want to talk to Yun Bingjun in this place, lest Tang Shan find out. Yun Bingjun didn't stop Chu Qiu. He only watched her back as she left, and finally entered the residence. He went to look for Tang Shan as soon as he entered the residence. After Tang Shan explained the matter, Yun Bingjun became somewhat absent-minded. I'll leave this matter to you. It's fine as long as she's satisfied. Tang Shan, on the other hand, was quite satisfied with Yun Bingjun's nonchalant attitude. That's right. After the little emperor plans to marry Gua I will bring this matter up at the morning court tomorrow. Yun Bingjun thought of the matter that he had discussed with Zhou Jin before. You and the family Tang needs to be prepared so that you won't panic when the time comes. Tang Shan, okay, then I will inform the family Tang about this matter tomorrow. Perhaps I can use this matter to mend my relationship with Gua a little. The next morning at the morning court, Yun Bingjun took the initiative to mention that it was time for Zhou Jin to choose an empress. Chapter 4883. Zhou Jin cooperated and said, Jin also thinks that we need an empress. When the officials saw this, they all said, I'm afraid that one empress is not enough. The emperor should choose 2 more concubines. Ever since the emperor ascended the throne, there has never been a general election. Whether it is the empress or the concubines, they are all important matters of the country. Only the general election can select the most outstanding women. Although they were reluctant to give up their legitimate daughter, it was fine to send in a concubine's daughter. The regent's power was growing, and the little emperor's body was still so strong. It was not easy for them to cause trouble. If there was a woman by the little emperor's side whispering pillow talk, then things would be much easier. Jean is not a perverted demon. Just choose an empress. Forget about the general election. Jean already has a candidate for the empress. Zhou Jin said. These officials really couldn't wait. Yun Bingjun. I wonder which family's daughter the emperor has taken a fancy to? Jean has taken a fancy to Tangua. She is the regent's wife's younger sister. Zhou Jin said happily, what does the regent think? This official thinks it's good. Zhou Jin, then this matter is settled. After the court, Jean will issue an edict to appoint Tangua as the empress. Your Majesty, you can't. Sure enough, there were officials who immediately objected. Who was Tangua? How could they not know? She was the regent's wife's younger sister. Not many people didn't know. The incident that year had once become a joke in the capital. They also knew that it had caused such a big commotion. How could a woman who couldn't get pregnant be the empress? Looking at the little emperor's meaning, he didn't have any plans to take in a concubine for the time being. How could that be? They couldn't achieve their goal at all. The regent was really too much. He actually used his wife's younger sister to confuse the little emperor. The rumor that they didn't get along must be false. That's right. How could a woman who left her family have a good life? There must be someone secretly taking care of her. Why not? It's Jean who is marrying the empress, not you. What? Jean marrying the empress? You want to interfere? Aren't you interfering too much? Jean has already decided to write an imperial edict after the court. It was the first time that the officials saw Zhou Jin acting so shamelessly. Seeing that there was no room for discussion, he was obviously captivated by Tanghua. The officials still wanted to object, and many of them even knelt down. If your majesty does not withdraw the order, this official will kneel here and not get up. Zhou Jin rubbed his chin. Did they think he was scared? Ministers, this doesn't seem too good. It's a bit difficult for his majesty. Yun Bingjun spoke at this time. You should all rise first. No, if your majesty doesn't withdraw the order, this old subject will never get up. Thus, Yun Bingjun didn't hold back. This was originally his majesty's family matter, but because you were dissatisfied, you wanted his majesty to go back on his word. Since you insist on doing this, I would like to suggest that the emperor set up a rule. When the officials heard this, they felt uneasy. Every time Yun Bingjun opened his mouth, they felt that things wouldn't go well. Your majesty, since all the ministers are so concerned about your family, this is also a good thing. It shows that you and your subjects are one family. Today, this subject proposes that in the future, when officials of 4th rank and above take a wife or take a concubine, it will be decided by the emperor. If your majesty is not satisfied, then it shows that they are not suitable for each other. When the officials heard this, they felt dizzy. This dog regent, they knew that it was definitely not a good thing. They hurriedly looked at Zhou Jin and found that his eyes had lit up. They knew that things weren't good, but it was too late to stop him. Good. What a good monarch, and his subjects are one family. If you insist on meddling in Zhen's affairs, Jin can't not meddle in your affairs. This is called reciprocating. The officials, bullshit. Chapter 4884. In the end, Zhou Jin and Yun Bingjun won the game between the two sides. It was impossible for the officials to agree. If they let Zhou Jin interfere with them marrying and taking concubines, wouldn't that cause chaos and become a joke? If he married Tanghua, then so be it. She was just an empress. In the future, Zhou Jin would take in concubines. Once the novelty wore off, they would have the opportunity to take in concubines. Right now, the emperor was still young and healthy. There was no rush. There was no harm in waiting for another 2 years. However, they didn't know that when Zhou Jin wrote the imperial edict, it clearly stated that he would only marry Tanghua as his empress in this lifetime. He would not take in concubines, and they would be together for life. Of course, Yun Bingjun had seen the imperial edict. He didn't expect the little emperor to be so infatuated with Tanghua. Thinking back to the first time he argued with the officials in the imperial court, it wasn't strange. That day, the chief steward of the palace went to Tanghua's residence to read the imperial edict. Miss Tang, just stand and listen. The chief steward could have directly handed the imperial edict to Tanghua, but Zhou Jin urged him to read it out in front of everyone. At first, the chief steward didn't understand anything. When he read the last sentence, he would only marry Tanghua as his empress in this lifetime. He would not take in concubines, and they would be together for life. He finally understood why. He trembled as he handed the imperial edict to Tanghua. This was the person the emperor doted on the most. On the surface, the chief steward was Yun Bingjuan's man, but in reality, he was Zhou Jin's man. Only by following Zhou Jin would one understand that the real Zhou Jin wasn't someone who could be controlled by anyone. On the contrary, he was decisive. Once he decided on something, almost no one could change it. But now, there was one person who could make him change. The person in front of him. Zhou Jin wanted to marry Tanghua as his empress. In less than half a day, the news had spread throughout the capital. Countless people were shocked. Some of the women who were still in their boudoirs couldn't help but feel envious. Although Zhou Jin didn't have that much power, his status was there. Now, as the emperor, he actually made such a promise. No matter what would happen in the future, at least at this moment, they were all very envious. There was actually an emperor who wanted to be with Tang Guo for the rest of his life. Even if the latter half of their lives would be difficult, they were still somewhat willing. They were a little regretful. Why didn't they approach the emperor? Isn't this too ridiculous? When Tang Shan heard about this, she said to the wet nurse beside her, "That's the emperor. How could he only marry one empress?" Call her out. Master said that she has no father and no mother. Ling Yu said with a smile. Master said that her parents would not watch her get hurt without doing anything. She also wouldn't think of ways to give her to my elder sister's husband as a second wife. Ling Yu's words made Father Tang roll his eyes in anger. Tell her that if she doesn't come out today, she can never return to the family. Then, she's not the daughter of the family. I'm going to kick her out of the family. Father Tang said fiercely. He didn't believe that Tang Guo wouldn't be afraid. Ling Yu said, "Then I'll go in and ask Master again." Not long after, Ling Yu came out again. Master asked Master Tang when he would kick her out of the family and if he needs her to go through the formalities. If not, she won't show up. After you kick her out of the family, send someone to inform him. Chapter 4886. This time, Father Tang was so angry that his vision turned black. He angrily left with Mother Tang. She's so arrogant. Back at home, Father Tang smashed a pile of porcelain. He still had a foul breath in his heart that he couldn't vent. It was too sullen. He had been an official for so many years, and no one had dared to speak to him like this. It was too infuriating. Master, I think she's just going for broke. She really doesn't want to return to the family, Tang. Mother Tang hesitated. Mrs. Tang hesitated for a moment. She probably resents us for not handling Shan Er's matter properly. Why don't we invite Shan Er over and have her apologize to her? Apologize? Do you want Shan Er to be at odds with us? The only one we can rely on is Shan Er. Her body isn't well. If you do this, won't it make her sad? Father Tang disagreed. She thinks she can compare to Shan Er after becoming the empress? Don't forget, the power of the great Mist Kingdom is in the hands of the regent. Don't come up with such useless ideas. What if something happens to Shan Er because of this? Mrs. Tang gave up on the idea. Shan Er was their family's biggest support. Originally, I wanted to bring her back and give her a decent wedding. Since she doesn't appreciate it, then forget it. Father Tang snorted and smashed another teacup. The sound of the teacup shattering made everyone in the room hold their breaths. She thinks I don't dare to expel her from the family, Tang? Someone, invite everyone here. I want to hold a family meeting to discuss the matter of expelling Tang Guo. Mother Tang, Master, this. With her personality, I was worried that she would cause trouble after entering the palace. It's better to expel her. You don't need to say any more. You should know what to do. Mother Tang didn't say anything else. Tang Guo really didn't know how to behave. She didn't give them any face at all. After becoming the empress, without the support of her mother's family, let's see if she cries in the future, Father Tang mocked. She really thinks she's capable. 2 hours later, the family Tang sent someone to deliver a letter to Tang Guo, saying that she had been expelled from the Tang Court. From now on, she had nothing to do with the Tang Court. By the time Tang Shan and Yun Bingjun found out, it was already too late. Everyone in the capital was talking about this matter. Naturally, the incident from back then was also being discussed. Miss Tang has already been disappointed. The main reason why she didn't return to the Tang family was because the Tang family didn't side with her. That place simply couldn't accommodate her. That person caused her to be disappointed. Tang's mother Tang's family did not say anything. I still remember that Miss Tang went to the temple to pray for blessings for that person. She pretended to cultivate in seclusion for 10 days and moved Buddha with her sincerity. Later, she got a prescription to prolong her life. Otherwise, do you think that person could have lived until now? To put it bluntly, It's all thanks to Miss Tang that I'm still alive. Now that she's going to be the Empress, the Tang family wants to share the cake. How can she not be angry? She even chased them out. The family Tang is really ruthless. I don't think Miss Tang cares at all. She's been living in seclusion for so many years and hasn't relied on the family Tang. Yet she's still living a good life. Zhou Jin got someone to spread these rumors. He didn't want anyone to take the opportunity to slander Tanghua. The family Tang originally wanted to label Tanghua as an unfilial daughter, but it didn't seem to have much effect now. If their daughter didn't return home, they would kick her out. It didn't make sense. Someone even asked Chu Qiu what he thought of this matter. Chu Qiu, it's hard to say, but no matter what, they are still her parents. They shouldn't have fallen out with her like this. They should at least maintain a superficial relationship. Yeah, I think so too. If she doesn't have someone to rely on in the future, her life will be tough. She's in the palace after all. Regardless of the discussions, Tanghua and Zhou Jin's wedding was held as scheduled the following month. After getting rid of a huge burden and marrying the person she liked, Tanghua was overjoyed. She didn't care about the rumors. Chapter 4887. After the wedding, Tanghua planned to stay in the palace for a while before going out to play. There was nothing good to be said outside now. Since Yun Bingjun dealt with the problem with the provisions last time, this kind of thing shouldn't happen again for the time being. Those small countries that harassed the border were also beaten back by the soldiers sent out and stationed there. As for the locust plague that existed in Tanghua's memory, it would take some time before it arrived. Tang Shan was busy looking for people for Chu Qiu. She guessed that Yun Bingjun wouldn't be able to bear it for long. She really didn't know how his relationship with Chu Qiu developed. She was the only one in the huge imperial harem, so it was relatively quiet. The previous emperor's concubines all moved to special palaces to live. Other than showing up at her wedding, they didn't come out again. Those who had children were taken out of the palace to live a peaceful life. Zhou Jian, on the other hand, didn't delay attending court just because he managed to coax Tanghua. After the court ended, he immediately ran to Tanghua's place. After a month, everyone knew how loving the emperor and empress were. They could often be seen walking hand in hand in the imperial garden. The two of them were like an ordinary couple. When news of this spread outside, the commoners took delight in talking about it. There were people everywhere who said that Zhou Jin was infatuated. However, when the madams and misses of the official family discussed this matter, it was different. They were indeed envious of the emperor and empress's relationship, but they all thought that this relationship was just a flash in the pan. After the passion passed, they would have to face the problem of having children. How could an emperor not have an heir? So what if they were loving? Chu Qiu heard such talk every day and thought the same. An emperor marrying a selfish woman who couldn't have children and didn't take any concubines sounded very dreamy. Not to mention the emperors of ancient society, even modern men were very realistic. Once they heard that a woman couldn't have children, even if they were married, they could divorce for this reason at any time. Chu Qiu couldn't help but think, how long could this relationship between the emperor and empress last? She also encountered a problem. Tang Shan would invite her over every 3 or 5 days to look for people for her. However, she still hadn't found anyone who met her requirements. She felt that her requirements weren't high. The person she was looking for didn't need to be in a high position and naturally didn't need to have multiple wives and concubines. He had yet to find such a person. These young masters of aristocratic families were not even comparable to the emperor. Of course, Chu Qiu was relieved that he couldn't find such a person. 2 months after Tanghua's wedding, the courtiers were getting restless. For the time being, they did not dare to raise this request in the imperial court. They were afraid that Zhou Jin would use this opportunity to interfere with their marriage. If he couldn't speak up himself, wouldn't they know how to use a roundabout method? If it didn't work on the emperor's side, wouldn't it work on the empress side? Tanghua found that when she went out for a walk recently, she often saw those old concubines who lived in seclusion. If they met, it was impossible for them not to greet him. They would even sit down and chat. Tanghua didn't care what their purpose was. As long as they didn't cause trouble, it was fine to chat. It had only been 3 to 5 days. but some old concubines had already exposed their targets. Behind these old concubines, there were actually some officials. Those officials probably didn't expect that they would be used one day. Empress, I'll say something inappropriate. Concubine Lu thought that she had a good time with Tangwa these days. She was considered one of the younger old concubines and was 10 years older than Tangwa. If she said something personal, Tangwa might listen, don't take it to heart. I'm doing this for your own good. Tangwa, Concubine Lu, please speak. Chapter 4888. I heard that you had an accident and can't get pregnant? When she said this, old concubine Lu spoke slowly. She always paid attention to Tangwa's expression. Any woman who was exposed would be angry out of shame. She was an old concubine without power and influence. She really didn't dare to provoke Tangwa. Tangwa was the empress. She was in charge of the entire harem. She could make her life difficult, and people couldn't do anything about it. If it weren't for this matter, I wouldn't mention this. No matter how much you love the emperor, he is the emperor after all. As the emperor, he must have an heir. If there is no heir, the one who will be criticized is not the emperor, but you, the empress. At that time, everyone will think that you are jealous and let the emperor have no children. Seeing that Tangwa wasn't angry, old concubine Lu continued to speak. She looked as if she was planning for Tangwa. If you care about other women, it's better to help the emperor find a woman with a lower status. When you have children in the future, you can raise them under your name. Yes, old concubine Lu is right. You see, we old concubines who stay in the palace to retire have no children. Otherwise, we would have been taken out of the palace long ago. Tangwa didn't think that these words were too difficult to say. If she wasn't the one sitting in this position, then the emperor wasn't Zhoujin. There would be a lot of variables in the future. However, she didn't like them to use themselves as an example. Although they were a little lonely in the palace, Zhoujin treated these old concubines very well. They were not worse than those who went out of the palace to retire. In addition to not having so much freedom, they ate and drank the best food. The regent was not too harsh in this regard. Yun Bingjun liked to be high and mighty. He had countless shops and businesses in his hands and was not short of money. Because he didn't like it, he was afraid that someone would instigate the little emperor to be disobedient. He often cleaned up those who played tricks. Therefore, the harem during Zhoujin's reign could be said to be the cleanest. Wasn't it comfortable to retire and live a good life? She insisted on meddling in these matters because she wanted to send her daughter in. Old imperial concubines, do you think it's not good to retire in the palace? Tangwa put down the teacup and asked. She didn't mention what the old imperial concubines had discussed before. These old concubines all thought that Tangwa had listened to them, and they couldn't help but feel happy. Humans are greedy. Once you have something good, you will want something better. You will never be satisfied. If the women in their family could give birth to a son or a daughter for the emperor, their lives would be much better. I entered the palace when I was 14, and I haven't left the palace even once in 20 years. If I had been able to give birth to a son or a daughter for the late emperor, then after the late emperor passed away, I could still live with my children for the rest of my life. How wonderful would that be? Old concubine Li said. Old concubine Li is right. Except for talking with you, sometimes I feel that the palace is too quiet, which makes me feel a little bored. I often wonder what it would be like to have my children and grandchildren by my side. Unfortunately, I don't have the chance to experience it. Is there anyone else in old Princess Li's family? Tangwa asked. Old concubine Li thought that Tangwa wanted her to meet her family. Of course, it was good, so she introduced her family. Her father was now a third-rank official. There were 2 brothers in the family. Their official positions were not high or low. The 3 sisters all married well. They all had grandchildren. What about old concubine Lu? Do you have a family? Old concubine Chen also answered. If she could see her family, then she could discuss this matter better. So, her words revealed that she missed her family. The peak. After Zhoujin finished his warm tea, he sat beside Tangwa and rested his chin on her shoulder. The two of them read the storybook in her hand together. This kind of scene happened every day. Lingyu was already used to it. She gave Qi-Qing a look and hurried out. Qi-Qing was also very gratified. As expected, His Majesty looked much happier now that he had an empress. Guo, I heard that the old concubines told you some unpleasant things today. Who told you that? Tangwa paused and raised her eyes to look at Zhou Jin. She didn't mind this, but this guy seemed to be more sensitive than her. Zhou Jin wrapped his arms around Tangwa's shoulders. There are no secrets in the palace. All right, I'll pay attention to them. I'm afraid that they'll say something that will make you unhappy. You have a peerless divine skill. If I don't pay attention, what if you fly away because you're unhappy? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 4890. I've treated them well, but they're all ingrates. They just can't bear to see me doing well. Not only did they stab me in the back, they even wanted to bite off a piece of flesh from my thigh. Zhou Jin's expression was ugly. These people are too greedy. If it were any other matter, he could tolerate it for the time being, but this matter, he could not tolerate it. Did these people know how many years he had waited for this day? Ah Jing, I want to tell you something. Tangwa grabbed Zhou Jin's hand. Today, I heard from the dowager concubines that they're living in loneliness and misery in the palace. They're always thinking about living with their families. The late emperor passed away many years ago, and I can't bear to leave the dowager concubines in the palace. Zhou Jin was still a little angry, but he realized that Tangwa's words were getting weirder and weirder. He didn't interrupt and listened to Tangwa continue. Today, I want to ask for a favor for them. Ah Jing, issue an imperial edict for them to reunite with their families. What do you think? The dowager concubine's words today have touched me greatly. After hearing this, Zhou Jin understood Tangwa's motive. He hugged Tangwa and laughed. He even kissed her on the cheek. Guo, you're really my good Guo. You're smart, kind, and righteous. My good wife, you're actually so considerate. After so many years, why didn't I think of this? Guo, it's fortunate that you're here. Otherwise, those dowager concubines wouldn't be able to reunite with their families for the rest of their lives. Ah Jing is also a good emperor. He's actually so righteous. If the dowager concubines know of this news, they'll definitely be happy and grateful to Ah Jing. System, dog, these two are really dogs. If he didn't know the whole thing, he would really think that they were thinking for the dowager concubines. Tangwa took out a piece of paper from her sleeve. I was afraid that I wouldn't remember, so I wrote down the names of the dowager concubines who wanted to go home. System, dog host, you even made a name list. Zhou Jin took the name list and laughed louder and louder. Even Lingyu and Qi-Qing, who were outside, did not know what was going on. But they were not curious, because when the emperor and empress were together, every moment was joyful. They just needed to stay outside and watch the door. Not long after, Zhou Jin brought Tangwa to write the imperial edict. Once the imperial edict was written, he immediately called the head chief to announce it. When Concubine Liu and the others received the imperial edict, they were very confused. By the time they finished listening to the imperial edict, their faces were already pale, and they collapsed to the ground. Old imperial concubines, receive the edict. It is also because you have met a kind-hearted and open-minded empress and an emperor who understands the greater good. Otherwise, how could you have such an honor? The people who will help you pack your luggage have been brought here. You can go back and reunite with your families before dark. Your monthly rations will be delivered to your residences by the people in the palace on time. You can rest assured as much as possible. An Exian? How could they be at ease? But could they resist? It was them who told Tangwa that they wanted to live together with their families. The empress sympathized with them and mentioned this to the emperor. The emperor was wise and had even agreed to let them reunite with their families. How could they object? When the imperial edict was issued, they had no time to prepare at all. It was too fast, and there was simply no time for them to object. These old imperial concubines were able to live well in the palace. Which one of them was not smart? They understood that this was a lesson from the empress. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio Female Supporting Character, calm down. Chapter 4891. As for those dowager concubines who didn't reveal their desire to return home and didn't try to persuade Tangua, they all felt somewhat fortunate. They didn't want to disturb these peaceful days, so they didn't listen to their families. They thought far ahead. If they listened to their families, they would only be involved in disputes. They didn't know whether they could succeed or not, and they might even get themselves killed. They didn't expect that they would avoid a disaster because of their misgivings. After today, the dowager concubines probably wouldn't dare to hang around Tangua again and would retire in the palace with peace of mind. Reporting to the emperor and the empress, the dowager concubines have already been sent home. The chief steward came to report the news. The imperial edict has also been announced. Zhou Jin was very happy now. There was no way they would dare to bully his guer. Humph. Well done. Presumably, the dowager concubines will be reunited with their families and won't feel lonely anymore. Zhou Jin said again, "Go and tell the other dowager concubines that if anyone wants to return home, Zhen will allow it." "Yes, your majesty." The chief steward's cheeks twitched as he went back. The emperor was still the emperor. Those scheming dowager concubines were now regretting their actions. Previously, when he went to send them off, they all looked listless and full of regret. Wasn't this their own doing? They didn't want to live a good life and had to make trouble for the emperor. Did they really think that the emperor was easy to bully? In dowager concubine Lu's house, the elderly Lord Lu and her two older brothers were all dumbfounded after hearing the imperial edict. After the outsiders dispersed and they closed the door, they asked dowager concubine Lu what was going on. Dowager concubine Lu recounted what happened today. Her tone was full of complaints, and she was very regretful. She couldn't return to the palace and could only stay here. It wasn't as peaceful and carefree as before. Wasn't she just looking for trouble for herself? She was really blinded by lard. How could she listen to these people and do such an illusory thing? She was really muddle-headed. Was it easy to succeed in that matter? She could already feel the disdain in her father, brothers, and sisters-in-law's eyes, but they had to arrange a courtyard for her. No matter what, she was still in dowager concubine. Even if she didn't like it, she had to stay. It was just that dowager concubine Lu didn't have the final say on what she would use, eat, and wear in the future. Old Princess Lu's good days were still to come. When the other old concubines returned home, they were almost the same as old concubine Lu, full of regret. Living in a small courtyard, how could the food and clothing be as good as those in the palace? The expressions of her family members were also not good. On the surface, this was a special honor, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this was a lesson from the empress. They would only be looked down upon and laughed at by others. Sent the 5 grand imperial concubines out of the palace? When Yun Bingjun received this news, he was somewhat surprised. What happened? After hearing the story, Yun Bingjun didn't care anymore. The little emperor had always been so unreasonable. He had long seen that the little emperor liked Tangua very much. He had never hidden it. Those old concubines were meddlesome. She deserved it. The little emperor had done a good job. Don't think that he didn't know that these old concubines were also incited by the family. Those officials did not achieve their goal, yet they still invited a Buddha back. How could they feel at ease? The old concubines' peaceful days were gone. How could she not complain? The two of them were enemies. There would be good days ahead of them. When some officials received this news, they all seemed to be very silent. Obviously, this empress was also very difficult to deal with. Their strategy was useless. None of the remaining old concubines wanted to offend her. After Tang Shan knew, she was worried about provoking public anger, but in fact, she was very jealous. The next day, when Chu Qiu heard the madams and young ladies talking about it, her expression was also very surprised. But soon she felt relieved. It was just a temporary liking. There was still a long way to go in the future. After all, those two were the empress, not an ordinary couple from an ordinary family. Miss Chu, the princess regent sent someone to invite you to her residence in the afternoon. She said that there is good news. Chu Qiu. Got it? In the afternoon, Chu Qiu went to the prince regent's residence. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio Female Supporting Character, calm down. Chapter 4892. It's really not easy to find someone you're satisfied with. After searching for so long, I almost gave up. Tang Shan was all smiles because she had really found someone who met Chu Chio's requirements. His family background was not bad and he was good-looking. Most importantly, he did not have a concubine or servant girl by his side. However, Chu Chio's heart sank. Was there really such a person in this world? For such a person to be able to produce a regent and an emperor was already very impressive. The emperor might change in the future. How could those commoners restrain her? Which family's young master is he? Tang Shan smiled. He's the young master of Marquis Ning An's family. I didn't consider that side before and only returned because of young Master Yun. He went out to study when he was 13. It's been almost 10 years now. No wonder I couldn't get any information on him. Marquis Ning An's young master? Take a look at the portrait. Tang Shan handed the portrait to Chu Chio. The person in the portrait was indeed handsome and unparalleled. He was not inferior to Yun Bingjun. Yun Bingjun was domineering and good-looking. The person in the portrait was dressed in pure white, which made him look otherworldly. He did not look like someone from the mortal world. He looked like an immortal who had descended to the mortal world. When Chu Chio saw it, she was stunned. Would such a person be bound by the rules of the mortal world and walk the path of matchmaking? Looks like you're satisfied. You're stunned. Tang Shan was relieved. As long as she could marry Chu Chio off, she would be able to settle one thing. Chu Chio's identity was too special. She was afraid that Yun Bingjun would really fall in love with her. If you don't object, I'll arrange for you to meet. How about it? Chu Chio came back to her senses. She did not fall in love with young Master Yun at first sight. She was just stunned by his immortal appearance. When she thought about how such a person was also going to get married, she instantly lost all thoughts about him. However, she had to get married here, have a family, and get married. Only then would she not have any wild thoughts about Yun Bingjun. She was afraid that one day, she would not be able to control herself and get close to the person she should not get close to. All right, as you wish, Princess Consort. All right then, let's arrange it for the day after tomorrow. I'll send someone to inform you when and where. Chu Chio felt a little uncomfortable, but he didn't show it on his face. Thank you, Princess. That day, when Yun Bingjun returned, Tang Shan told him the good news. Yun Bingjun looked at Yun Jiling's portrait and didn't say anything for a while. So Jiling has returned from his study trip. I didn't expect time to pass so quickly. Will Jiling agree to this? Yun Jiling and Yun Bingjun both had the surname Yun. Of course, they were somewhat related. If one were to calculate, they should be distant brothers. When Yun Jiling was young, Yun Bingjun had even carried him. Let's have them meet first. I heard that Jiling is not here. Chapter 4893. Tang Shan was now paying close attention to Yun Bingjun's expression. If Yun Bingjun dared to show any signs of disapproval, she could not help but suspect that Yun Bingjun already had some thoughts about Chu Chio. If Yun Bingjun really had such thoughts, she could not stop it from developing. When a man no longer loved you, there was no need to say anything. She would not allow such a thing to happen. Yun Bingjun. All right, you arrange it. Yun Bingjun returned the portrait to Tang Shan. No matter what, both of them must be satisfied. Of course. If they are not satisfied, wouldn't they be randomly matched and become a resentful couple? Tang Shan said with a smile. The nervousness from before had completely disappeared. On the third day, Chu Chio and Yun Jiling met. Yun Jiling was even better than in the portrait. Chu Chio and Yun Bingjun did not expect that Yun Jiling would agree to this matter. I did not expect that someone like young Master Yun would agree to meet me. Facing Yun Jiling, Chu Chio spoke her thoughts. Yun Jiling said with a smile, a long time ago, I have heard of Miss Chu's great name. Before I came back, I was wondering when I would be able to meet you. These years of studying outside, I have seen many things, but I have never seen a woman like Miss Chu. Chu Chio felt that Yun Jiling had a good impression of her. Young Master Yun is too kind. No, you are worthy of it. The two of them talked for 2 hours. Yun Jiling told Chu Chio about his experiences these years. She had to admit that this person was really good. when she asked him about his views on choosing a partner and what he thought of being together for life. Yoon Jilin actually said that he envied this kind of immortal couple life. When he was speaking, his eyes were looking at her. From curiosity at the beginning to admiration now, Chu Chio was at a loss. On second thought, wasn't she looking for such a person? After seeing so many things, Yoon Jilin was really the best choice. Everything should come to an end. Perhaps Cloud Ridge was the best choice for her in this strange world. Facing Yoon Jilin's next invitation, Chu Chio agreed. She saw that the smile on Yoon Jilin's face had become gentler. She thought in her heart that being with such a person was indeed relaxing. A long time ago, someone had said that you must marry the person who likes you the most. If you can't be together with Yoon Bingjun, then Cloud Ridge is indeed not bad. He was a very open-minded person who did not adhere to the secular world and did not have much prejudice against women. How could she not be happy when she was with such a person? After Tang Shan learned of Chu Chio's thoughts, she became more and more satisfied. She had long expected that Yoon Jilin would like someone like Chu Chio. Other things aside, Chu Chio had lost her memory and her family background was unknown. She was indeed an extraordinary woman. It was precisely this kind of woman that made her feel uneasy. When Yoon Bingjun found out about the result, his entire body was covered in cold air. However, he had always been like this, and no one had discovered anything. Tang Shan saw that Yoon Bingjun was not very concerned about this matter and was satisfied. It seemed that Bingjun did not have any thoughts about Chu Chio for the time being. Tanghua, who was in the imperial palace, also knew about the matter between Chu Chio and Yoon Jilin. I heard that the two of them are getting along very well recently? Tanghua asked. It seems that the two of them are going to be together. Zhou sat at the side and was helping Tanghua peel melon seeds. When he peeled out 20 seeds, he would use a small plate to send it to Tanghua's hand. Seeing her eating happily, he would also reveal a smile. Ever since a batch of restless imperial concubines were sent back to their parents' home to retire, the surrounding people had become well-behaved. They no longer talked about taking in concubines and having children. It should be peaceful for a while. Peak. Chapter 4895. Yoon Jilin was shocked. I didn't expect the Emperor and Empress to be an immortal couple. You don't seem to know much about the Emperor and Empress? Chu Chio was puzzled. Different from Yoon Bingjun, she realized that Yoon Jilin was a very indifferent person. Power and money were like smoke in his eyes. I don't pay much attention to these things. Although he said this, Yoon Jilin had already decided to go back and understand the story between the Emperor and Empress. When he understood, he also found out about Tanghua's experience. He didn't know how to react when he received so much news. It turned out that the gentle and generous cousin-in-law in his eyes actually harmed her own sister. He didn't expect things to turn around. Tanghua became the Empress and was very loving with the Emperor. Because of Tang Shan's identity, Yoon Jilin didn't think much about this. As he interacted with Chu Chio, he liked her more and more. He already had the feeling that if he didn't marry Chu Chio in this life, it would be a lifetime of regret. Not long after, Yoon Jilin expressed his feelings to Chu Chio, hoping to live with her hand in hand for the rest of their lives. Chu Chio said that she needed a night to consider. The next day, she agreed. After she agreed, Yoon Jilin arranged for a matchmaker to propose marriage. Chu Chio didn't invite anyone. Tang Shan did all this. Naturally, the matchmaker went to the regent's residence to propose marriage. At that time, Tang Shan and Yoon Bingjun were both there. Tang Shan made the decision to agree. She and Chu Chio had already discussed this matter. Naturally, she didn't have to object. Yoon Bingjun sat at the side and watched. He was very angry, but he couldn't do anything to stop this. After succeeding in advance, Chu Chio began to prepare for marriage. She didn't go to the store often. She had a group of people under her who could help her manage the business. She also had the regent's residence behind her, so no one dared to play any tricks. Guo, if you lose, they will get married in half a year. Zhou Jin was still peeling sunflower seeds. Don't worry. Even if I lose, this job of peeling sunflower seeds is still mine. Such a delightful job couldn't fall into the hands of others. They haven't gotten married yet, right? Let's wait until they get married. Even if they get married, there will be a divorce. Zhou Guo, you're being unreasonable. But it's okay, you're right. Ling Yu, can I leave? System, you can't. If you leave, who's going? Yun Jiling, to invite his friends to attend the wedding. Because of this, he set the wedding date to get married in half a year's time. This way, there would have more time for him to let's chooses. 3 months had passed. Cloud Ridge's good friends came from all over the place and were all arranged to stay in the inn. Every day, Cloud Ridge would drink wine and chat with them. SSSSS2, S to her to T2, STS to T, T T T T, S's, T2's Tug, S. That day, he sneaked into Chu Chio's house and caught him red-handed. The two of them met, but they didn't say much, two. But marriage was like this. Yun Jiling was the most suitable person for her. Do you want me to be alone for the rest of my life? Jiling, great. I'm very comfortable with him. Chapter 4896. You should leave. It's not good to be seen by others. Didn't we agree to forget everything in the past? That way, each of us will be safe. Yun Bingjun, you're deceiving yourself? Then tell me, if I don't do this, what should I do? If I don't marry Yun Jiling, what kind of result can you give me? Chu Chio really couldn't help it. Yun Bingjun didn't come, but he still came. Her emotions couldn't help but explode. He clearly couldn't do anything. It wasn't good to stay quietly in his regent's residence. Why did he have to come and find her? Yun Bingjun was indeed stumped. He didn't know how to answer for a moment. Chu Chio pushed him out. Go, don't come again. However, Yun Bingjun still came every night. Seeing that Chu Chio didn't sleep late at night, he could understand that Chu Chio's heart was filled with him. What should he do? He really couldn't let go of Chu Chio. Tell me, what should I do? Yun Bingjun asked his confidant beside him. Master, why do you have such doubts? Since you like Miss Chu, why don't you bring Miss Chu back to the residence? Men can have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Master isn't falling in love with every woman he sees. He's just really moved. Since he's moved, why can't he be together? To say something inappropriate, Master will definitely regret it in the future if he watches Miss Chu get married. Master, can you really bear Miss Chu marrying another man? No, of course not. However, would Chu Chio agree to be with him? Chu Chio had always yearned for a pair. Would she accept him? Yun Bingjun's side was in a dilemma, and Yun Jiling's side was also in a situation. This Yun Jiling was with Chu Chio when someone informed him that his best friend had come. He's the heir of the Nanqi Kingdom's Junwang Manor. We met when we were studying. He's a good person. I must introduce this person to you. Yun Jiling then brought Chu Chio to meet the heir of the Nanqi Kingdom's Junwang Manor. Chu Chio originally wanted to make another friend. Someone who could be praised by Yun Jiling must be extraordinary. She really didn't expect this heir to have such a deep relationship with her. When the other party saw her for the first time, he excitedly came over and pressed on her shoulder. He Hui, why are you here? He Hui, where have you been all these days? We've been looking for you for so long. Father and mother are still looking for you. Mother has fallen sick several times because of you. Chu Chio was stunned. He Hui, you know me? Of course I know you. If I don't know you, who would know you? I'm your big brother. Why? How long has it been? Don't you recognize your big brother? Chu Chio was dumbfounded, and so was Yun Jiling. He knew that Chu Ding had a younger sister. He often heard Chu Ding mention her, but they had never met before. Naturally, they didn't know that Chu Chio was Chu Ding's younger sister. However, they were all surnamed Chu. My name is Chu Chio. I really don't know you. Chu Ding. Of course you're called Chu Chio. What else can my sister be called if not Chu Chio? Chu Ding patted Chu Chio's head lovingly. You little girl, you're being naughty again. You only know how to make your brother angry. Chu Chio was very confused. I really don't know you. I lost my memory. Perhaps the person in front of him was really a relative of the original owner. Lost your memory? Chu Ding's expression was serious. What happened? Why don't we sit down and talk? No matter what happened, let's make things clear first. Yun Jiling suggested. Okay. Let's sit down and talk. Chu Ding finally reacted. How do you know he Hui? Yun Jiling, Chu Ding, our relationship might change. In the future, you should be my brother-in-law. Chu Ding. Chapter 4897. Chu Ding's arrival not only unraveled the mystery of Chu Chio's birth, but also revealed the cause and effect. Chu Ding was certain that Chu Chio was his sister. Another reason was that there was a mole behind Chu Chio's right earlobe. If Chu Ding hadn't mentioned it, Chu Chio wouldn't have noticed it herself. There was no problem with her identity. Chu Chio recognized Chu Ding as her brother. Come back with me, he Hui. The matter of you running away from the marriage hasn't been resolved yet. Chu Ding said. Chu Chio shook her head. Even if I go back, I can't marry that person. Your family didn't force you to marry, but you ran away. You've lost all your face. It's not like they can't do without you. They just want you to go back and settle things. Apologize and don't make things difficult for your parents. Is it really just an apology? Chu Chio asked. Chu Ding, of course. Chu Chio looked at Yun Jiling. Yun Jiling nodded and replied. Okay, then I'll go and take a look. Yun Jiling said, no matter what, with my relationship with Chu Chio, I have to meet my future father-in-law and mother-in-law. On the second day after the matter was decided, Chu Chio brought Chu Ding to the regent's residence. She said that she wanted to go home and take a look. After knowing Chu Chio's true identity, Tang Shan and Yun Bingjun were both surprised. This was something they never expected. They didn't expect Chu Chio to have such a background. Chu Chio and Yun Jiling's wedding was postponed. On the third day, they returned to Nanqi together. The postponement of the wedding made Yun Bingjun sigh in relief. This period of time was really too stressful for him. Not to mention what happened when Chu Chio returned to Nanqi. Not long after they left, Zhou Jin received a secret report. There was a locust plague in a certain place. The local officials were afraid that it would affect their performance, so they didn't report it. Moreover, the locust plague seemed to be spreading. If it was left alone, that place would have no harvest today. At that time, who knew how many people would starve to death? Tangwa's divination was accurate again. Zhou Jin asked someone to secretly reveal this matter to Yun Bingjun. As expected, after Yun Bingjun found out, he brought up this matter in court and arranged for people to deal with it. Prince Regent, I still have something here that should be able to help us deal with this locust plague. Zhou Jin happily took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. This is a prescription that the Empress gave to me. It is said that as long as you can make the medicine according to the prescription, grind it into powder, and scatter it on the ground, the locust will not dare to come close. Even though we won't be able to stop the local losses, at least we can stop the locust plague from spreading. Yun Bingjun took the prescription and looked at it. There were a bunch of densely packed names of herbs, most of which he was familiar with. Tang Shan had been sick for so many years, so it was not strange that he knew about this. He could understand the name of the medicine, but he didn't know the effects of the prescription. He glanced at Zhou Jin and saw that he had a smug look on his face. He did not feel any wariness in his heart. It was not strange that Tangwa was able to come up with a prescription to prolong her life and a prescription to deal with the plague of locusts. The little prince couldn't wait to take it out, most likely because he wanted to show off his wife. Whether or not this prescription would work, he could only try it out. If the locust plague was not dealt with, who knew how many people would starve to death this year? In less than 2 days, someone leaked the news that the locust plague had spread. When grain merchants saw this, they immediately raised their prices. Moreover, the prices were higher and higher day by day. Even in the capital, 1 liter of grain was sold for 50 taels of silver. This was something that ordinary people could not afford. As long as they knew that the locust plague had spread, everyone was in a state of panic. Those with a bit of money in their family frantically stocked up on grain, afraid that they would not have any food to eat this year. Chapter 4898. Of course, another reason for hoarding grain was that if the locust plague really got out of hand, they could still rely on these grains to make a comeback. Those who had the ability to hoard grain were naturally aristocratic families. On one hand, they went to places where the news had not been leaked to by low-priced grains, while on the other hand, they sold high-priced grains in the capital. There was no loss at all. Weren't these aristocratic families backed by these officials? Zhou Jin had a headache this time, and so did Yun Bingjun. Even if the locust plague was solved, the grain prices would not recover in a short period of time. When it recovered, everyone would be poor, and these aristocratic families would be rich. I still underestimated the alliance between these aristocratic families and the officials. The news of the locust plague that day was leaked by them. At first, I thought that there would be no movement, but in the end, they secretly went to buy grain. Zhou Jin said angrily, "At present, the commoners' families should be able to hold on for a while. After a while, if we want every family to be able to eat cheap grain, the only way is to open some granaries. However, this can only be a vicious cycle. After all, the granaries cannot be fully opened, and no one can predict what will happen in the end. When the time comes, these aristocratic families and those officials will still be the winners." This was the first time Tangwa saw Zhou Jin so angry. Usually, in front of her, he was all smiles and was very shameless. She put her hand on Zhou Jin's shoulder. "Why didn't you ask me for help when you encountered such a big problem?" "Guo, I'm afraid you can't help me with this matter." Zhou Jin hurriedly held Tangwa's hand with both hands. "I know you want to help me. You've already helped me a lot by giving me the prescription to get rid of the locust plague. But this is grain, and millions of commoners need it. And the majority of this grain is in the hands of the aristocratic families. It's impossible for the granaries to be fully opened. With so much grain, Tangwa really couldn't help him, although he was still very touched. Who said that the grain is in the hands of the aristocratic families?" Tangwa asked. "Ajin, as the emperor, you have to remember to update the news at all times. Be careful that one day your seat won't be stable." Zhou Jin was a little confused. What did Guo mean? "The bulk of the food is actually in my hands." Tangwa didn't keep him in suspense. "You just need to say the word, and on the day the people run out of food, affordable food will immediately appear everywhere." She had been in this world for many years. Most of the profits from the salt well were used to purchase food. The land of the Great Mist Kingdom was fertile, and the harvest of grain was excellent. Almost every household had a lot of surplus grain. She had already sent people to purchase everything that could be purchased. From the memories she obtained, she knew that something like this would happen after the locust plague. At that time, countless people had starved to death. Especially when the plague of locusts spread to that area, countless people were so hungry that they could only die on the ground. It was not that there was no food, but these aristocratic families were not philanthropists. They would only crazily raise the price at this time, making food more expensive than gold. How many people would be able to eat it? Really? Zhou Jin was shocked. Ling Yu, who was standing at the side, couldn't help but interrupt. "Your Majesty, it's true. Her Majesty has been purchasing food all these years. Your servant guessed that Her Majesty had foreseen this and made preparations in advance." "Yes, Guo must have foreseen this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about those two things in advance. As the Emperor, I'm really not as good as you." Even Yun Bingjun, who is so good at scheming, didn't think of this outcome. Chapter 4899. Guo, please decide when to release the grain. Zhou Jin held Tangwa's hand, not thinking that there was anything wrong with living off a woman occasionally. He was such an amazing man that everyone else was envious of him. "Okay, I'll send a messenger pigeon immediately and get them to do it." 10 days later, a portion of the commoners started to run out of grain. No matter what, they couldn't run out of grain. They all took out their savings and planned to buy high-priced grain. When the time came, they would mix some with wild vegetable pancakes to at least satisfy their hunger. However, as soon as they reached the streets, someone was beating drums and gongs, saying that the Tang family grain merchant was selling low-priced grain. When the commoners heard this, they immediately rushed over. Because Tangwa had stored a lot of grain, she wasn't afraid of selling it all out. So, The price was still the same as before. However, each person would not sell too much to the other person. Furthermore, those who came to buy grain had to bring their own identification card. Every purchase would be recorded. However, this didn't stop certain grain merchants from sending people over to buy grain. They planned to buy all the grain in the Tang family grain merchants' hands. When the time came, the price would still not be lowered. However, as the days passed, half a month went by. Not only did the Tang family grain merchant not sell all the grain in their hands, they even seemed to have a lot left. They decided to wait a little longer. They waited for another month, but the Tang family grain merchant was still the same. This time, the aristocratic families couldn't hold on any longer and started to lower the price. At first, they lowered the price a little, but later, no one cared. Seeing that the Tang family grain merchant was still holding on, and hearing that the locust plague had been resolved, and that there would be new grain in a few more months, they were afraid that the grain in their hands would be gone. So, they quickly restored the price of the grain to its original price. When they restored the price to its original price, the Tang family grain merchant disguised themselves and bought a lot of their grain. In fact, after a month and a half of selling at low prices and the destruction caused by the grain merchants, the Tang family's grain merchant was almost finished. However, there wasn't any shortage of grain. The grain in their hands should be able to last for a few months, so the Tang family grain merchant wasn't afraid. The aristocratic families naturally understood that if they didn't make a move, they would really lose everything. After the grain war, not only did the Tang family grain merchant under Tang was named not lose anything, they even made a profit. She also used a portion of the silver to buy a portion of the grain from the grain merchants as a backup. In ancient times, food was the most important thing. There was no need to worry about sales at any time, and it was very useful. In the second year, she would sell the old grain and store the new grain. This was the cycle. She wasn't afraid of losing money, because the salt well business alone could make her a lot of money. She didn't even know how much money she had. This was all thanks to the million taels of gold that he had gotten from Yun Bingjun. Who was the person behind this Tang family grain merchant? Under the candlelight, Yun Bingjun looked at the short introduction on the paper. He couldn't find out anything about the other party and was very curious. But from their actions this time, it was clear that the people behind the Tang family were different from those aristocratic families who only cared about benefits and didn't care about the big picture. It was only because he couldn't get to the bottom of the matter that he felt a little uneasy, but he couldn't do anything about it. In any case, he was someone who was opposing an aristocratic family. He couldn't afford to provoke the other party. If another aristocratic family was born, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Chapter 4900. Meanwhile, in the palace, in Tanghua's bedroom, Zhou Jian was happily hugging Tanghua and telling her about what had happened recently. Late into the night, his mouth was dry from talking, but he still couldn't stop. Guo, I will definitely tell the world what you've done. In the future, the people will know that you saved them. Guo, you've surprised me. You're always so predictable. Zhou Jian sighed. I can't wait. I'm afraid that my current status isn't good enough for you. You're preparing to take action? Next year, I'll take back all my rights. Okay. With the matter settled, Yun Bingjun looked at the news about Nanqi. Knowing that Chu Qiu was safe for the time being, he calmed down. He still didn't know how to face Chu Qiu. It was impossible for Tang Shan not to notice Yun Bingjun's abnormality. Yun Bingjun spent a lot of time in the study every day. Occasionally, he would stop by the autumn water rouge shop. Tang Shan finally understood that Yun Bingjun had feelings for Chu Qiu. Fortunately, she had a plan in advance. Now that Chu Qiu had returned to Nanqi because of her identity, it was impossible for her to be with Yun Bingjun. When Chu Qiu returned, she would marry Yun Jiling if there were no accidents. At that time, the situation would be set. There was nothing to worry about. But when she thought of Yun Bingjun having feelings for another woman, she felt uncomfortable and angry. She wanted to strangle Chu Qiu to death, even if Chu Qiu had saved her 2 children. I don't know when Sister Chu will return. It's been a few months. I miss her so much. Yun Dan said. Yun Xian said, yeah. Didn't she say she'd be back soon? Yun Xian didn't see Tang Shan's ferocious expression at all. She even asked her, "Mom, do you want to ask Dad when Sister Chu will be back? I miss her so much. Without Sister Chu to play with, I feel like something is missing." "Yeah, Mom. Ask Dad when Sister Chu will be back." Tang Shan tried to control her expression. She patted the two children's heads. "If you don't know, go ask yourself. Why do you have to make Mom ask? If you want to know, go ask yourself. We've already asked this morning. If we ask again in the afternoon, Father will definitely scold us." Yundan said embarrassedly, "So, Mother, you should go and ask." Tang Shan's face was very stiff. It turned out that she had already asked that question in the morning. Looking at the two children's anxious looks, it was likely that after Chu Qiu left, they would ask Yun Bingjun every day when Chu Qiu would return. Tang Shan's heart was a little twisted. This Chu Qiu had taken away her husband's heart, and now she was trying to steal her child. "Mother, why don't you go and ask?" Tang Shan had no choice but to ask. "Yun Bingjun, I don't know." Yun Bingjun was surprised that Tang Shan would suddenly ask about this. "It should be soon. I heard that the matter over there is almost settled. It should be done in 1 or 2 months." How could he know so clearly? Tang Shan didn't flare up. After all, Chu Qiu was going to marry Yun Jiling. Once she exposed the truth, she didn't know what Yun Bingjun would do. She wanted to act as if nothing had happened and wait for Chu Qiu and Yun Jiling to get married. But now, she actually didn't want Chu Qiu to come back alive. If Chu Qiu was here, wouldn't Yun Bingjun miss him? There was a saying that went, "What you can't get is the best." Yes, she couldn't let Chu Qiu come back alive. Tang Shan left in a daze. Not long after, she decided on one thing. She couldn't let Chu Qiu come back alive. Chapter 4901. A month later, Chu Qiu finished dealing with her family's matters and prepared to return to the capital with her dowry. She did not have a good relationship with her family for running away from the marriage, but she had already run away and could not do anything. They did not want to have anything to do with her. Chu Qiu did not feel embarrassed. There was no point in marrying people who did not want to be together. Tang Shan was looking forward to this day, and so was Yun Bingjun. However, what they received was news that Chu Qiu had met an assassin and disappeared. Tang Shan thought that it was her people who did it, but she later found out that her people did not even wait for Tang Shan before she was assassinated. Before Tang Shan could regain her senses, she heard that Yun Bingjun had brought troops to find Chu Qiu. Even her son and daughter had gone with him. At that time, Tang Shan's eyes turned black and she fainted. "Ah Jin, look, Chu Qiu's marriage was not easy. Her previous debt has been resolved on the surface, but some people still do not want her to come back alive. Zhou Jin, this time, Chu Qiu is most likely dead. She won't die. Zhou Jin, Guo is right. I have lost every time, so I won't gamble this time." Yun Bingjuan's movements were watched by countless people. In less than half a day, the news spread like wildfire in the capital. The regent knew that Chu Qiu had been assassinated and brought troops to find her. When the ladies in the boudoir heard this, they were all surprised. However, someone forcefully explained that Yun Jiling was also among them. Yun Bingjun should have gone to find Yun Jiling. 3 days later, Chu Qiu and Yun Jiling were both found. The two were heavily injured. If they had been late, they might have died. When Yun Bingjun saw Chu Qiu's dying appearance, all the emotions in his heart finally exploded. He really could not bear any harm to Chu Qiu. Chu Qiu and Yun Jiling were both brought back to recuperate. Chu Qiu was brought back to the regent's residence. After taking care of Chu Qiu, Yun Bingjun went to find Tang Shan. I'm sorry." Tang Shan's tears immediately came out. "You like her?" "Yes, I tried not to think about it, but I couldn't control it. These days, I was afraid to hear news about her. I was afraid that when I saw her, she would already be dead. I want to take care of her. I can't continue to ignore my feelings for her." Tang Shan's face was pale as she said, "Then why are you telling me this? You are the regent. If you want to take a concubine, do you need to inform me?" Whatever." Tang Shan looked away. "Don't tell me these things. I don't like to hear it." When Yun Bingjun brought up this matter, she wasn't prepared at all. She didn't even know how to object. Making a scene? There was no point in making a fuss. It would only make people think that she was inferior. When Chu Chio woke up, the first person he saw was Yun Bingjun. The first thing Yun Bingjun said was, "Cancel the engagement with Yun Jiling. I realize that I can't live without you. You already have a princess. You know that I won't be a concubine. I won't share my husband with others." Chu Chio pushed Yun Bingjun away. "It's not suitable for me to recuperate here. Let me go back." Yun Bingjun refused, but under Chu Chio's insistence, he could only send her back. When Yun Dan and Yun Xian heard this, they felt somewhat regretful and chased after Chu Chio. When they returned to the manor, they were called over by Tang Shan. Tang Shan prepared to tell the two children that their father had taken a fancy to Chu Chio and wanted to take Chu Chio for himself. According to her understanding of these two children, they might very well hate Chu Chio. When she told them about this matter, Yun Dan and Yun Xian looked at each other in shock. There was no disgust in their eyes. No wonder Big Sister Chu insisted on going back. It's because father's thoughts were too much. Yun Dan said, "Big Sister Chu is about to get married. Father actually had such thoughts." Yun Xian, "Big Sister Chu is a good person. Which man in the capital wouldn't be moved?" Tang Shan's vision darkened. Why were these two children's reactions different from what she imagined? Shouldn't they be very disgusted? "Mother, you don't have to worry. Since Big Sister Chu chose to return to the courtyard, she definitely isn't willing." Yun Xian comforted, "Don't blame father. After all, Big Sister Chu is very attractive." "That's right. Mother, when Big Sister Chu gets married, father will naturally dispel his thoughts." Chapter 4902. Tang Shan simply couldn't accept Yun Dan and Yun Xian's attitude towards Chu Chio. It made her feel betrayed by the two children. She couldn't get angry or make a fuss. That wasn't her personality. She was also afraid that if she got angry, the two children would make a big fuss. In reality, in this era, it was very normal for men to take concubines. Even Yun Dan and Yun Xian were subconsciously like that. They didn't dislike Chu Chio mainly because Chu Chio had gone through hardships with them. Chu Chio was an extraordinary woman in their eyes. It wasn't strange for Yun Bingjun to be attracted to such a woman. Didn't the two of them also admire Chu Chio? The second reason was that Tang Shan was still by their side. They were gradually growing up and weren't 5-year-old children who were afraid of losing their mother. Moreover, the life-prolonging prescription was their reassurance. Tang Shan and Chu Chio were very good to them. If Yun Bingjun really wanted to be with Chu Chio, they wouldn't think that they were being bullied. Tang Shan was so angry that she had a heart attack. Yun Dan and Yun Xian left with a look of indifference. After comforting Tang Shan, they went to comfort Chu Chio. When Tang Shan heard this, she painfully clutched her heart. Dan and Xian have learned bad things from others. They must have learned bad things from Chu Chio for the two children to think that Chu Chio was good. She could tell that if Bingjun really wanted to marry Chu Chio, the two children wouldn't be too opposed. To her, this was simply the end of the world. Tang Shan felt that she had been betrayed by everyone. Chu Chio couldn't stay. Regardless of whether she and Yun Bingjun would be together, for the two children, she couldn't let Chu Chio live in this world. It just so happened that there were people in southern Qi who wanted Chu Chio's life. She would beat them at their own game and help them take Chu Chio's life. Moreover, Yun Dan and Yun Xian came to Chu Chio's house to comfort her. Their father was just being selfish. As they comforted her, they found that Chu Chio didn't seem too happy. They didn't understand what was going on. For several days, the two of them came to see Chu Chio, afraid that something would happen to her. Yun Xian was very attentive and quickly saw that Chu Chio actually liked Yun Bingjun. "Is what you said true?" Yun Dan asked in surprise. At this moment, they were hiding in a room and discussing this matter. Yun Xian affirmed, "It's true. Haven't you noticed that father has been going to Big Sister Chu's courtyard very frequently recently, and the way Big Sister Chu looks at father is very strange?" "No wonder. I knew they were acting weird when they were together. I can feel that father seems to have a lot to say to Sister Chu, but Sister Chu seems to be avoiding him. Unexin, of course. Big Sister Chu is about to get married, so she naturally has to restrain herself. Our father is different. He's in a high position and has a lot of power. If he likes Big Sister Chu, of course he'll look at her openly. As for Sister Chu, she likes father, but she can't express it. Since Sister Chu likes father, why did she marry Uncle Jieling? Yun Dan asked another key question. Yun Xian shook her head. I don't know about that. I'll have to ask Big Sister Chu. Go ahead. You and Big Sister Chu are both women, so it's easy for you to explain. No matter what, I don't want to see Sister Chu unhappy. Father has been very unhappy recently. I say, Big Sister Chu is actually a good person. If she really likes father, why can't she come to live in the prince's mansion? Chapter 4903. Yun Xian agreed. Yes, doesn't mother like Sister Chu very much too? The two of them didn't even consider that Tang Shan was unwilling. Under Yun Xian's countless pestering, Chu Qiu finally told her the truth. She told her that her marriage to Yun Jieling was just to escape this relationship that she shouldn't have. She liked the feeling of being together, not sharing her husband with others. But you don't like Uncle Jieling. Will you really be happy after you get married? Yun Xian asked. Sister Chu, I can already feel your unhappiness. You're still young and don't understand these things. If your mother knew, she would definitely be sad. Yun Xian shook her head. No, mother also likes Sister Chu very much. Chu Qiu didn't take Yun Xian's words to heart. Since she had talked so much with Yun Xian, she was also willing to talk about her own matters with her. As she chatted with Yun Xian, Chu Qiu even had a feeling that her relationship with Yun Bingjun wasn't supposed to be like this. What Chu Qiu didn't know was that the assassins arranged by Tang Shan had already quietly approached to take her life. Half a month before her wedding, Chu Qiu went to the temple to burn incense and encountered the assassins on the way back. Tang Shan didn't expect that Yun Bingjun would secretly go to pick up Chu Qiu and happened to encounter such a scene. The assassins were all wiped out, and one was even captured alive. Father, did you get the results from the interrogation? Yun Dan and Yun Xian hurriedly asked Yun Bingjun, is it someone from Nanqi? They also knew that Chu Qiu had some grudges with a certain family in Nanqi, so they asked. Yes. Yun Bingjun lightly replied, it's someone from that side. In reality, it wasn't. The results of the interrogation were too shocking. It was someone arranged by Tang Shan. That person did indeed want to pretend to be someone from Nanqi, but unfortunately, his accent betrayed him. After being forced to confess under torture, he finally confessed his origin. Yun Bingjun knew why Tang Shan did this, so he didn't blame her and even took the initiative to hide this fact. The day before Chu Qiu's wedding, Yun Xian came to find her again and asked if she had really decided. Chu Qiu, I've already decided. In the afternoon, Chu Ding also came to find Chu Qiu. I can see that the person you like is actually Yun Bingjun. Didn't you run away from the marriage because you didn't like the young duke? Now, you've chosen someone you don't like. Jieling treats me very well. Chu Qiu said. Chu Ding said, to be honest, the young duke treated you well back then. No matter how you look at it, you're the one who let him down. Running away from the wedding day made him lose face. It's different this time. Chu Ding sighed. He Hui, I hope you can consider it carefully. If you really like Yun Bingjun with your status, we can ask His Majesty to make an appearance and let Yun Bingjun marry you as a co-wife. Your status will not be lower than the regent's consort. I've already inquired about it. The regent has more power than the emperor, and he's also infatuated. You're so good, so it's inevitable that he's moved by you. Marrying him, it's not too bad. It's better than marrying someone you don't like. I know your personality. If you don't like Jieling, I'm afraid you won't be happy in the future. He Hui, after today, you can't go back on your word. At night, Yun Bingjun also came to find Chu Qiu. He asked Chu Qiu if she could change her mind. If she was willing, she would be his co-wife. The moment he knew that Tang Shan had acted against Chu Qiu, Yun Bingjun had made this decision. The latest website to download the latest TXT ebook. Please click to read this book on mobile, to post a review, to make it easier for you to read it next time. You can click on this save button at the bottom to record this reading. Next time you open the bookshelf, you'll see it. Please recommend this book to your friends. Thank you for your support. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.